guess whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Hey guys, I am with CarcinogenSDA. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for having me, Bob.
So we are in your lair, your command center, if you will, where you do all your streaming.
Yes.
I have a lot of questions for you, and some of them are going to be really dumb questions. So you're gonna have to bear with me.
Dude, go for it.
I'm a fan of your work, but I don't know much about the craft. So I guess I'll start with the dumbest question of the day. What does the SDA stand for?
It stands for Speed Demos Archive, which is it's like the longest running speedrunning website on the internet. It's a website that I used to submit all of my videos to. So it's like, just as speedrunning has grown on, and Speed Demos Archive has kind of fallen, has kind of fallen on the wayside. I still keep it there because it's like that's where I came from. That's like my origin story.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Second dumbest question of the day. How tall are you? I'm not a short guy by any means, and he towers over me. I feel like a midget next to him.
Here, it's the first time someone's called me tall. No, I have to give you money.
Yeah, it's funny too because I'm sitting in a chair that makes me look taller, but this is funny because that's how we look when we're standing next to each other. Except he's that much bigger than me.
Yeah, it's like it sure is a thing.
6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, like 6'5".
Jeez, big dude. But I grew this way, he grew that way. But yeah, so back to more relevant questions.
Sure.
So you are, is there a proper way to say it? A Twitch streamer, a streamer? What's the, is there a politically correct or incorrect way to say something like that?
You could just say that, I'm like a streamer. Like generally it's it would be more accurate to say a streamer, or in my case, I'm a speedrunner, so just call me a speedrunner, I guess. But it could go streamer, speedrunner, or if you're like a pro player, then you could say, oh, he's like a pro Quake player or a pro Dota player, or something like that. So, but in my case, it's like the terms speedrunner and streamer are pretty interchangeable as far as I've seen when people refer to me. So
gotcha. And Twitch is still the number one go-to place for people who are doing their live streaming, but I do see a lot of people re-upload their content. Maybe sometimes it's edited for the best parts up on other platforms, mostly YouTube. I've seen a bunch on Vimeo as well, though. Is that pretty much how it goes?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, it's like even though Twitch is pretty much at the forefront of live streaming as far as video game content is concerned, the YouTube install base is still very, very, very large.
Mm-hmm.
It's like even though Amazon, definitely sees like, the benefit in owning a content creation platform, and they're doing everything they can to just make Twitch explode. So far it's working.
Mm-hmm.
It is important to, not ignore the fact that YouTube still has, like an install base just like 1 billion users large.
Yeah.
So, so at the same time, it's like their clauses, their contracts, they don't forbid you to upload your stuff to YouTube. You just like can't, like, it just if you're a partnered streamer on Twitch, you can't like stream it to the same platforms at the same time.
So a partnered streamer would be somebody that has like a paid account, correct?
Yeah, someone who basically gets paid, a share of like, the ad revenue, the subscription revenue, and any donations, like any on-site donations would get paid, like to the streamer with like, a split in like, the corresponding areas.
That's interesting because all my channels are the free channels. I think my YouTube's I think I have ads on that, but it's paid me nothing. It doesn't even pay for like one beer during the stream. But I use Restream.io so I could simulcast on both.
Yeah.
But because I'm not a partner, that wouldn't apply to me. I'm allowed to.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you have like a viewer base, on both channels, then that's a place where it would benefit. Otherwise, I mean, like I think generally when most people simulcast, like I usually see it's like people who are like not sure what platform they want to choose, and they're just like kind of taking a shot in the dark, and just like kind of doing both sites either way until something hits, and
until one picks up, and then you stick with that one primarily, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I feel like it could be very tough trying to entertain crowds on two platforms at once.
It is, because and for the record, for any of Carci's fans that are watching, I'm
Hi.
Bob from RetroRGB, and I do not stream games. I have streamed one or two, but it was more just like a for fun, laid back thing. Any of the streaming that I've done is always like the hardware tech based. I think everybody's favorite was when I was tuning the CRT live on camera, and a couple of my friends signed off because they were convinced I was going to die touching So, yeah,
True
but
that.
yeah, that's the type of stuff I do. I don't mostly do games, but yeah, it's rough because you have to have, for me, especially when I'm walking around the office doing things, I have to have a friend log on and have both windows up to check the chat in both. And then if one's really engaging, you tend to accidentally forget about the other, and it's a little overwhelming. So I do try to stick to one at a time now, but I see the appeal as just throw it out there and see what bites. But, so now you just had a pretty amazing week at GDC, right?
Yeah, GDQ, Games Done Quick.
GDQ, Games Done Quick.
Yeah.
So can you explain basically what that is for people that don't know, and then what happened?
Okay, so well, Games Done Quick was a Games Done Quick is a charity speedrunning event. It takes place twice a year. It's run by like a group of people who started it up from Speed Demos Archive. Like the origin is like Games Done Quick comes from the namesake comes from a series of like earlier videos on Speed Demos Archive called Quick Done Quick, and eventually once speedrunning grew to a reasonable size, groups of people started live streaming charity events. Things like the Penn and Teller Desert Bus. I'm sure.
Right, of course.
I'm sure some of your viewers may be familiar with that, where they just play Desert Bus for 8 hours on the stream
Just
and whatnot.
for charity, just to be silly.
And then there was another group called the Speed Gamers who they beat games like reasonably fast, but not like world record fast, like breaking it down to a science. And then it's like we saw that and it's like, hey, why don't we try doing something like that? I mean, like we've got like a small group of people who are well versed in pretty much every popular speedrun game. Why don't we just like get together and just do it? And it started at MagFest and it was supposed to be a MagFest in 2009. But some things fell through, and we wound up streaming it at the head organizer's basement, Mike Oyama's basement, and that was like a classic Games Done Quick. I personally didn't participate in that one, but I was still there because it was still a speedrunning meetup, and there weren't like any of them at the time. It's like even though it was decided very early on that I wasn't gonna get a run in, I still wanted to be there. I still wanted to support, try to help out in any way that I could, and then the year after that, it's like there's like a larger, like it got larger. Basically, the attendance just outgrew a basement, and so it started renting a 4-H center for like a whole week. There was like a 4-H center like not too far, and just like rented that out for a whole week, and then it kind of grew marginally larger. Outgrew the 4-H center. Now it's hotels. So here we are now, and basically Games Done Quick is now it's like on twice a year. It's on like the front page of Twitch every week, and there's like an upwards of like 150,000 viewers, like 150,000 average viewers watching, like speed runs for like a week straight back to back.
That's pretty awesome.
And it's like this year we raised about like for Awesome Games Done Quick, the Games Done Quick raised about $2.2 million for the Prevent Cancer Foundation.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Games Done Quick, like, I haven't really done any of the research, but I'm pretty sure that it's like the highest grossing video game charity event in the world right now.
Jeez, that's killer. And you participated this year, and now your primary game that you speedrun is Resident Evil, correct?
Yes.
So in PS2, which is there more than one Resident Evil for PS2?
I run all my RE, like pretty much all of my Resident Evil games like on as close to original console as I can. Just just because that's the way the leaderboards for the game are organized. Is we have like all the disc-based consoles in one category. If it's running emulators, we have it in another category. But I mean, there's a bunch of different categories for Resident Evil 2, and that's just because it's the nature of the way each individual port was programmed. They can't be compared to each other, so we can't just have them all on the same leaderboard or even time them all like
That makes
real
sense.
real time for each of them, because there's always going to be like differentials and load times and just like stuff like that. So we have to find some way to keep at least the versions consistent. But in my case, I try to run the games on as close to the original hardware as I can, and that's kind of where I discovered like the RGB rabbit hole, because I wanted to because I just wanted to squeeze out better quality out of all of my game consoles, and especially because I want to branch out into doing other consoles like N64, SNES, original Nintendo, stuff like that, where all of like the popular speed games are on, and I want to kind of learn about as many video games as I can, essentially.
Well, I definitely want to circle back around to your
Sure.
hardware setup, but to stick at the moment with GDQ, so you show up with your own hardware, and you show up with a PlayStation 2. And did you bring a monitor to that one as well, or did you use one of theirs?
I used one of theirs, but this year I ran Resident Evil 7, which was on PC.
Oh, you did the PC one.
Okay. Yeah. Like Resident Evil 7 just came out in January of 2017, and it quickly shot up to becoming the single most popular Resident Evil game to speedrun very quickly.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's like aside from being new, like pretty much everyone who's been on the Resident Evil train at some point has probably like been on YouTube and seen like some robot playing the video game or something, robot figuratively speaking, because usually a lot of these speedruns, they don't have commentary, but there's usually like some crazy Chinese or Japanese dude just there, like just totally destroying the game, and and because of like how easy it is to unlock all of the New Game Plus items, like the like a really strong handgun, infinite ammo, and like a circular saw, which basically functions as like the game's rocket launcher, except it's like an obscenely powerful melee weapon that destroys bosses in like 3 seconds.
Love it.
It's it basically just became, and because it's like also in first person, you don't like, it was intended to be in VR, but it's not in VR for most people. They're like either playing with their PS4, with keyboard and mouse on PC. So it pretty much has like a lot in common with, just like running a first person shooter game as well. Consequently, it's like it became the most accessible Resident Evil speedrun game.
Okay.
So and people just started running it, and I ran the game at Games Done Quick on the new game, like on new game settings, meaning I didn't use any of the bonus items. Like I just straight up took whatever the game would normally give me on a first time playthrough, and I also finished the game on Madhouse difficulty, which was the most difficulty in the game. So it made for a lot of tension.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, what your average decent gamer, so not a competitive gamer, not a speedrunner, but somebody that's just good at video games, how long would it normally take to beat Resident Evil 7?
I mean, my first playthrough of Resident Evil 7 took me like 8 hours.
Okay.
And I would say like, the average playthrough would be somewhere between like 10 to 12 hours or something like that.
Okay. And what did you do it in at GDQ?
1 hour 49 minutes and some change. Like I was like 30 seconds under estimate. I don't exactly remember how much time it was. I just know I came in like just barely under the estimate of an hour and 50 minutes that I submitted whenever I applied to submit a run to the event.
That's absolutely incredible. So how does the speedrunning process start? So you play through a game and you like your average player would, but are you immediately, the first time you play a game, looking for pathways, remembering shortcuts, things that you could do to improve?
I mean, in my case, because I've been speedrunning since like 2006, so like going on like 12 years now. I just kind of like look for that stuff naturally, because that's just the way like I've trained myself to be in video games. But otherwise, I try to enjoy the game casually for at least a few playthroughs.
But you can't unsee stuff like that.
Yeah, but
it's
I
like when
can't.
Cruz and I see an
but
arcade monitor and we know that it's out of calibration. That's all we can see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like I'm already looking for like like generally in my first couple of playthroughs, like the first things that I'm going to notice are, okay, so what is the fastest way from point A to point B? And, you know, it's like not necessarily like, you know, the fastest way around enemies, but like I'm looking at things like event flags, which are basically the the game's engine basically like sort of checks these off like as you go along and just like hit different event triggers. Excuse me. And then basically I'm just like looking for the fastest, you know, just like what is going to be the direct thing that I am going to do next.
So when you say an event trigger, it's whatever triggers the next part of the game to start. So
Yes.
you have to be able to get to that, and it's okay.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes, you know, you can actually skip to to like further sequences in the game using glitches or, you know, sequence breaks. Like sometimes, you know, you can just like, you know, walk right by a place that you're supposed to do and just like trigger the next set of events, which may or may not necessarily be a sequence break, but generally sequence breaks are considered glitches, you know, like a lot of times in a lot of games, it kind of depends on the game's community. It might go into a different category or something. In the case of Resident Evil 7, the game's event coding is actually pretty airtight. So there's no glitches to speak of that you can really take advantage of to break the game from point A to point B. There is one out of bounds trick, you know, where you can get sent outside of the game's bounds, and, you know, just like clip through a wall basically. Like you can have like, you know, the main bad guy Jack, if you're like facing a certain way, like while standing on the stairs, and then he like spins, then he like does like an animation where he like spins you around, like the hand is supposed to go in front of your face because, you know, it's like a little VR gimmick, right? And he turns you around, but when he does, what happens is your hitbox just like clips through the wall, and then the game is trying to eject you, but it ejects you the other way.
So did you discover that one of the first times playing it then, or was that?
No, I didn't discover it. Like in general, speedrunning itself or glitch hunting itself is usually it's usually crowdsourced.
Okay.
So, you know, it's like half the things that I find, you know, like half the things that I do. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Half the things that, you know, I would do in a speedrun, I didn't typically find them myself.
Okay.
So I mean, like I'll do the routing for my own runs, and I'll leave it to my best judgment, you know, what is going to be the fastest way to complete the game, and I'll always try to look for ways to do it faster. But in general, as far as like finding techniques and stuff, you know, that usually comes with like the research of like, you know, one or two people, and it's like, oh, maybe we can do it this way or do it that way, and, you know, until it becomes like, you know, choreographed essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's like the people who build cars versus the people who race cars, right? There's it's two totally different ways to approach even though it's all a car. So yeah, that makes sense. So how long from the first time that you played it did you get it to like 2 hours ish?
Well, I didn't really start speedrunning it until maybe about about a week or two into the game's, you know, into after release. Like into the game's release. There were plenty of other people who were already pushing 2 hours, less than even. So like around, you know, like 140, 130, it just like kind of gradually, you know, went lower and lower and lower as people started getting more and more competitive. I just kind of chilled out because it's like, okay, I already see like, you know, what the general meta is supposed to be for the speed, for the speedrun tech. But I want to try and stop and, you know, find my own tech, try to find something different to do, because, you know, it's like competition. Sometimes competition is fun for me, but generally I just like kind of like to piddle around, do my own thing, and try to find something that's going to make for good YouTube content.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because while you say that, the competition part I get, but at the same time, it's not like you need to be, you know, in your room here. I mean, obviously in public around people, you performed equally as good, if not better. So it's not like you have to be alone to do it. It just maybe like it's not the competition that drives you. You're just competing with it's not the competition with other people that's driving you. You're competing with yourself, and
yes.
But it's not about being alone. It's just about you're trying to beat your own goals rather than trying to beat other people.
Yeah. Essentially, that's what I like to do. Is I like to try to beat my own goals. Like occasionally, you know, I'll go to like, the competitive categories, and try to learn new things here and there. But it's like only as long as I find it fun, because it's like if I try to overburden myself with like so many different time saving tricks and just keep resetting runs over and over again, because that is the thing we do. We play the game over and over again, and sometimes we have to like hit the reset button if we miss an important time save or something, and we have to practice it. We're not consistent at it, or something like that.
Yeah.
I've done that plenty of times with RE7, but generally it's like I like to try to look for something more consistent.
Gotcha. So, out of all the things that you pick up on these games, little ways to cut time, ways to make things go faster, how do you memorize that? Like personally, what are your tricks to do that? Is it just repetition? Do you have like a regime that you stick to that helps you memorize things? Which I guess is the same question I could ask anybody about like studying for an exam, but it's always very interesting to me to see how people approach things like that.
I think of it more like, because my exposure to speedrunning has always been like videos.
Hmm.
It's gonna sound a little full of myself to say, but I've always viewed like when I was younger, I graduated high school, and it's like, man, I see all these people doing like all these skilled things in these video games. I want to try it too,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I want to look good while doing so. So like I would do that, and it'd basically be like kind of sort of like playing out the script for a movie, basically.
So yeah, all right, that's a great analogy, like rehearsing your lines for a movie. So then so you would practice all the hard parts individually, so that when the time comes to play those in the game, you're already really good at them. So
Yeah.
it's not so much that you're memorizing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're memorizing all the best scenes, and then
Yeah, but of course the breakdown is different for each type of video game. I
Right.
mean, I'm not necessarily like I'm not trying to go for like in a movie. I'm not trying to go for like the things that make people feel something. I'm just trying to beat the game, man.
True, but
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just trying to beat the game. I'm just trying to beat the game fast.
but it's got to be it's got to be an adrenaline spike when you get to certain places, especially ones that have been challenging you in the past and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
Actually,
it's a little different with GDQ. Total disclaimer, it's a little different with GDQ, because it's like at that point, it's because you have to be consistent. You have to be able to beat the game. It's like pretty much all those, everything about time saves has got to fly out the window. You have to use what we call like marathon strats or safety strats instead, in order to like consistently beat the game, and try not to get too far behind, because the objective is to basically inform, entertain, and and generally make it look good, as opposed to I mean, it's like, like if the game has a lot of checkpoints, then it's a lot easier. But in the case of a Resident Evil game, there's not all that many checkpoints either. Like you generally have to like manually save your game, which means like in the case of Madhouse, there's only 4 checkpoints throughout the entire game.
wow.
So like normally in Resident Evil 7, there's like there's like maybe about 13 to 18 checkpoints. I actually don't remember. But there's also limited saves in Madhouse, so you have to like pick up like all these cassette tapes and save your game. Like you have to go out of your way to create a checkpoint, and you have to determine like the best places to do that. And generally, when I did that, I chose the places that would generally screw me over the most. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
So it was one of the things that I've been noticing lately is whenever I can casually play through a game, and more of like, I guess this is probably the wrong word, but an adventure game. So not like a Tetris or something like that. Something with a storyline to it, and fun little secrets like a Zelda or a Metroid or something. If I could play it casually, and I play it an hour a day or something like that with some gaps in between, I tend to remember so much about it, all the weird little details.
Right.
And then recently I knew that I had some extra time, and then I know coming up I'm not going to have any extra time for a few months. So I blew through like 3 games, and I barely remember anything about it. I did it in like, 12-hour games that I did in maybe 4-hour stretches. And I don't know what it is, but I don't retain And it's not like I'm sitting on my couch stoned out of my mind zombieing through a
Right,
game.
right.
Like I'm actually sucked
You're
in, enjoying
yeah,
the process.
you're actually your head is in the game, but it's but it doesn't really retain. Yeah.
Do you ever find stuff like that, or is that just like once you train yourself like any other athlete, your brain just gets used to it. You remember everything, and you just keep
Yeah,
going.
it kind of depends on like how long I've been playing or speedrunning the game. Like with some games, it takes me about a day or two, like just to like sort of refresh myself and also like try to practice any new strats that I might not have learned since since I last did a run. But sometimes it's even as sometimes it's even as big as like oh well, I actually need to refresh my memory on what even is point A to point B sometimes, because like take what like there's a game I run, Parasite Eve 2, for instance. And it's like I ran it for about a week, and I got like about like a time of around like an hour 30. But when I come back to it, I don't remember like what the most important ammo pickups are. I don't remember like the boss strategies, which are like which are the crucial part of the run in order for you to even be able to complete the run at all. You know what I'm saying? So, and I mean, it's like, well, I remember like the macro of the game. I don't really remember the micro all that well.
Interesting.
And sometimes it's like that with other casual games. Like if I play through a game, like over the course of like 2 days, like I played a game called Galarians on the PS1. I only remember like one or two choice parts that just had like silly dialogue, and I was only playing the game for what, like 2 days at most. But I don't even remember anything that I did. I don't remember.
Funny.
I don't really remember anything that I did. Like I have a loose idea of what I kind of went through while I was playing the game, and there's some emotions attached to certain difficult parts of the game. But other than that, it's like when I try to go through and play through it again, it's gonna be like it's gonna be a blank slate for me.
Gotcha.
Just a blank slate with a little bit of with a
Familiarity to
little, yeah,
it.
with a little bit of familiarity, but not too much.
Interesting.
Like that's kind of how it's always been with me, and like first playthroughs of a lot of games, like Final Fantasy games. I'd often get like 20, 30 hours in when I was younger, and it's like, okay, I want to try this. I want to try going through the entire game again, except I want to try doing it knowing what I know now, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think any of the games that I really loved, that's exactly how I approached it. It's not often that I have time to go to play it one right after the other like that, but it is. I try to, especially I just finished Axiom Verge again, and there's a lot of great speedruns I've seen for that one, and I'd only played it one other time, and I'd forgotten the dumbest thing in the world. I couldn't get past one part. All you got to do is use one of the guns that you've had since the beginning of the game, and I didn't remember that at all, and I didn't remember a lot of the details. But I did. It was just being able to play it again with just enough of a gap to forget, and there was so much familiarity, and it gave a totally different perspective. I really enjoyed it. Whereas a lot of the games that I've played just a million times, I still love them every bit as much. But like, I mean, there was a point in every '90s kid's life that played Super Mario 3 about a million times in a row every day. No save games back then and anything.
Yeah.
So I used to know every detail of every block, and I'd still enjoy it. It would just be not as immersive as a wide open game like Axiom Verge, or I guess technically even Breath of the Wild would be, where you could just wander about and do what you felt like.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you play that one, by the way?
Breath
of the Wild?
Breath of the Wild, a little bit. I didn't really get as into it as I would have liked. Just simply because it's just so open world, as it were.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I'm like the video games that I like to play. I always like to say find freedom and restriction, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So, like I just try to like work with a certain subset of elements, and just like kind of turns into a bit of a puzzle for me.
Yeah, and that's I think why so many people, myself included, liked Super Metroid so much. Is because you weren't
Super
allowed
Metroid's
to pass certain parts without certain enhancements. But if you learned how to do the glitches, and the first time I was able to do a jump and get into an area that I wasn't supposed to, like it was just the coolest feeling in the world to just get to that point without it. So I like that freedom and restrictions, but then you get to break those restrictions. And
Yes.
that's always exciting.
Absolutely. That's like one of the main appeals for speedrunning for some is, you know, like finding, you know, like finding freedom from restrictions, finding freedom in restrictions, just basically taking the game's rules and, you know, just like totally turning them upside down.
Yeah.
Some people even go as far as to inject arbitrary code into games. Like, did you see any of the taskbot blocks in
No.
Games Done Quick? Well, okay, there's this thing called taskbot. Do you know what a task is?
No.
Okay, a task is a tool assisted speedrun. Basically, what it is it takes, like, a lot of people consider it cheating when they think oh, tool assisted. So it's like emulators.
If you're not put in the same competition category, it's certainly not cheating.
But it's like I don't even look at emulators as, I don't even look at tasks as competition. I look at it as you know, it's a movie that just shows, like, you know, crazy stuff that you can do in the game that a human would not be able to achieve. And that's really the whole point of a task. Now, on the other hand, if you pass off a task as real competition, that's hella cheating.
Right.
But but in the case of a task, tool assisted speedrun, using an emulator, slowing it down frame by frame, using save states, and basically making like an input file, like a file of, like, you know, all the inputs and stuff. Now, if you take that input file, you can actually run it through an Arduino bot and output it to say like a Super Nintendo or something. And basically, what it would do is it would like do all of the inputs that you did on, like, emulator, and you basically be able to play back a tool assisted speedrun on a console.
So you literally have the Arduino box as if you were hitting the controller.
Yeah.
Except
But it hits the buttons for the controller, and it goes into
hits the buttons that you would hit on the emulator.
Yeah.
That is, I gotta look one of those.
Yeah,
up.
but aside from that, you know, some people who are like, you know, way smarter than you or I would be able to take like a task input file. They'd be able to, like, watch the memory in the game using the emulator and figure out how to, you know, tweak, like, you know, this memory value here, that memory value there with these input sequences. You know, if I grab this coin here, then it manipulates this registrar, you know, shit like that. And then
I have seen those, but only in, like, how to beat Super Mario 3 in 25 seconds or something like that.
Exactly. That's arbitrary code execution. You know,
Gotcha.
you've probably seen a guy on freaking what's the guy's name? Was it Stephen Colbert? I think it was Stephen Colbert. Yeah, it was Colbert. Where a guy named Mitch Flowerpower beat the game almost as fast as Colbert could make a hot pocket.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was
hysterical.
it was during SGDQ last year, I think.
Huh.
Where it was like they flew him out from Canada to just have him on the show, and he's doing, like, the arbitrary code execution run where he can beat the game in, like, 3 minutes. And you know, yeah, so there's something like that. But to take it even further, because the bandwidth of the controller ports is crazy high, you know, like, sometimes you can just straight inject data through those controller ports, and you know, just like do crazy things like create like a webcam interface almost.
Really?
Yeah, like but more notably, like, what taskbot has done was they were able to basically take Super Mario World and inject a game of Snake into it.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, they just took Super Mario World and used, like, you know, sprites and, you know, programming elements within the game. They made Mario, like, do a certain thing, and, you know, like, they did certain inputs at certain frames until it basically just, like, they basically wrote the code, and then they did an action to execute the code in the game, and then suddenly there's like a game of Snake.
That's pretty awesome.
And, you know, and similar things were done at, like, last year's AGDQ, where they had basically like a black and white camera of, like, the crowd of Twitch chat even getting rendered on, like, the Super Nintendo, like through the controller ports. Like, they basically had to do, like, a direct wire from the Arduino unit to the whatever traces, handle the controller ports,
Mm-hmm.
and just like literally inject, like feed it data through the controller ports
That's
to
neat.
just to just like totally break the game and get the Super Nintendo to basically do whatever they want.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask what other games, like what are your go-to
Sure.
games when you speedrun? So you have the Resident Evils obviously, and then you mentioned one other before. Do you have like a repertoire of games that are like yours? Your bread and butter of like here's my thing.
It's mostly old school PS1 games. Sorry for going on a tangent.
No,
over
I,
there,
I
but,
loved it. I loved
yeah.
it, and I'm not sure about
Yeah.
your watchers,
You can-
but
yeah.
I know the people that watch my show are gonna love shit like that.
Yeah,
they
you can-
probably
yeah.
paused it to go Google the taskbot running.
Yeah.
I love it.
Definitely check that out.
I just want to make
it's
sure
so
I
cool.
have to. I have
Yeah,
more
exactly.
questions I want to ask you. So
Come full circle. I've been notoriously bad for staying on topic, but yes, going back to the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mostly do like old school PS1 games, just like from like PS1 and 64 era, but mostly like action games, RPGs. My three favorite game series are Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, and Final Fantasy. But I kind of dabble in like other Konami games, Castlevania.
which one? The Symphony of the Night.
Well, I've done speedruns of Aria of Sorrow in the past,
Oh,
but
okay.
I haven't actively done anything with Castlevania in years. But I love following the speedruns, and I definitely want to get back into it for sure.
And now you have a device that'll make that easier to stream.
Yes, sir.
We'll get to that later. But yeah, so I just lost my train of thought for a second. I'm sorry. So on any of these games, are you a current record holder for some of these?
Resident Evil.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Just some records on Resident Evil 1 and 2.
So, for people that want to start out, it's pretty self-explanatory. You sign up for a Twitch account, and then you stream your game on it. But for people that want to start submitting records and things like that, I've known of people over the years that were back in the 90s would do the VHS tape recordings and then send them into magazines.
Yes.
And then as life happens, right, you have to go out and be an adult for at least a little while, and then you come back to it. I know a lot of people that are in that stage of their life from, mid-20s to mid-30s that are going, I want to do this again.
Yeah,
and I
if you-
don't want to get out a VHS tape.
Yeah,
do it that
if you
way.
don't mind me going on a tangent, I can definitely like elaborate on the history of of that. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but I mean, like I think I'll start with the most obvious answer. I mean, like these days, all you have to do is take your game console, split it out between like the TV and the capture card, record the video, and submit it to speedrun.com.
Now, is there any proof required that you're using like a standard console? Like in your setup, would you have the console, and if you were starting out, not obviously not somebody that's been there, would you have the console in view just to show that you're actually using it, or is it just one of those you would know the difference?
Some people, some people probably like to do that. I haven't really seen it so much, but I mean, in my case, I kind of have to have a little thing on the side because I do RGB. I do like RGB video. Like everyone's asking, is this an emulator? Is this simulated? And I'm like,
I was just gonna
and
say,
I'm like,
yeah.
no, it's not.
The first time somebody used a hacked Mini, SNES Mini, that that was properly done and everything, and then especially after the open source scan converter came out, a lot of people were like, "That's an emulator." And it's like,
No,
it's not.
that's an emulator. No, it is not an emulator.
Yeah.
But for yeah,
So
for recording, there's no. I mean, like there is like certain proof that may need to be done. It kind of depends on the community.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there is a known way to cheat the game, that like say for instance in Resident Evil 2 on the PC, if you hit F5 over and over again to like shift it into full screen and windowed mode over and over again, while OBS can still capture it, there's a very obvious like pausing.
Mm-hmm.
Someone could just like try to pass that off as like lag and be like, oh well, my computer just kind of sucks. And it's like, well, okay, occasionally there's like network stutter, occasionally, like, there's the freeze frame and nobody likes to make local recordings. Whatever, maybe we'll just let this pass until we go to the results screen and see that they beat the game in 20 minutes.
Right.
As opposed to like, hi Ren. Hey buddy, this is my best friend and comedic foil.
Gotcha.
Basically it's like until it goes down to like, it's like 20, it's like, oh well, he just beat the game and the timer says 20 minutes. The video is actually like 60 minutes and the world record is like 48 something, but in order to get around that, we have a program along the side that runners also need to capture in order to show the in-game timer so that we can like actually see it's counting upward consistently. And they're not like manipulating it or anything.
So this is definitely going to fall into the dumb question category, but that's something that I always wondered because I've never done any speedruns. Is how do you set and get the timers in OBS? That's not something that you could connect to a console.
Well, here I'll show you. So here's like the timers. You can't really connect it to a console. There might be a way to connect it to a console if there's like a way to somehow view the game's memory over like a network or something. I don't know.
There's probably a way to do a real-time clock something.
Yeah, it require like some crazy hacking. But like here's the program I use. It's called LiveSplit. I'll go ahead and do like a little window capture for you since like we're on my setup. So it's like boom, and there it is. There's a timer.
So you literally just manually hit go on the timer and then hit start on the game, and that's it, right?
Yeah. Yep. That sure is a split. Yep. I sure beat that part of the game at that time. Yep. Man, look at all these golds. I'm on world record pace. Go.
Gotcha.
I have to.
And because you're being because there's a camera recording you, a capture card recording the game, and then that through OBS, that's the proof that you're not just making the stuff up.
Yes, yes and no. I mean, it kind of depends on what kind of proof that the leaderboard calls for. But generally, whenever I do submit, because I've been doing this for a long time, I just generally submit like a raw video of the game. And it's like played from start to finish, and generally, it's like anyone's watching it. Anyone who's watching it can just like look at the gameplay and look at the timer, and they would just see that there's nothing funny going on because I try to get like as good quality of video as I can.
Gotcha.
And sometimes that's all you need, but otherwise, if there's. But otherwise, sometimes it does open the door for cheating a little bit. Like sometimes people can just like take the video files and splice them together. But if you're
a live streamer, it's
But if you're streaming it live, then it's like the proof of burden is like a little less. But
Gotcha.
Generally it's you have to you're like pretty much the runner is like accountable for showing proof that they did it a certain way. Like for instance, turbo controllers is like, oh, are they doing it? Are they able to mash a button that fast? So I just do a video of myself going, just like that,
Gotcha. So it makes sense, and I guess it's a lot of common sense based because if you're just starting out and you're going for a record and you don't come anywhere near breaking the record, why bother proving you have real equipment? You didn't, you're not stirring the waters yet.
Generally, yeah, but I mean, like there are still like there are still rules that you kind of have to follow for submission, and some verifiers are more lax than others, but generally it's like the top 10 times that are that are going to matter the most.
Gotcha. So I did want to talk about hardware because that is obviously my thing.
Oh boy.
So one of the things that I was always very fascinated about is I have messed with so many different revisions of so many different consoles. And as time goes on, not only do different revisions act differently, but all electronics wear differently. So if you're in a humid climate, a hot and humid climate, your capacitors would go quicker than others, and every little thing is just a small, imagine one piece of paper.
Yeah.
Not light or not heavy at all, but everything that you keep stacking, next thing you know, it's a heavy thing you're carrying. It's the same way with all electronics, right? One little thing, eventually you start to see differences.
I should probably start turning off my power strips whenever I'm not directly playing my game consoles then, huh?
But I guess the point of what I'm saying is what factors go into what consoles you could use? Because if you were to theoretically, get a cryogenically frozen PS1 from the day it came off the assembly line and turn it on now, it would absolutely load your games faster than one that's been used 24/7 since it came out. And
Most certainly. There was actually a Japanese Resident Evil runner a long time ago who actually used to do exactly that.
cryogenically freeze his PlayStation.
Sure. No, he'd just buy like two PlayStations. One that he would use for practice, and another that he would have specifically because there was no wear done on any of the moving parts or anything like that.
And now the practice one has 400 or 500 hours on it, whereas the gaming one that you stream
Yeah.
live with and set your records only has 10 hours on it.
Right. But this was like during the mid 2000s, and it was crazy. Like this guy didn't even own a computer, but he still went as far as to use two different game consoles because it's like, yeah, I don't want to lose time to something like to wear down on moving parts, because obviously he was insightful enough to see that.
I knew a guy who bought 2 cars once for that. I wasn't friends with him. He was a little odd, but I think it was a Firebird. A certain model came out in the 80s. And the only reason I knew is because he used to have both parked in his driveway next to each other. And I thought it was the oddest thing where I would drive by. And one day I ran into him getting out of the car. I was like, yeah, aren't you the dude with 2 of those? And he's like, yeah, I delivered papers. And I didn't want to, I love this car. So, a week after I bought it, I went back and bought a second one. And that's only got about 200 miles on it. I love that one.
Yeah.
And my first question was, well, if you love it so much, how come you always leave it outside? And he's like, well, I just love the way it looks. Both cars sit next to each other. But, this is my daily driver that's beat up and the other one's mint. Like,
the other one's mint. He's like saving it so it won't depreciate. Yeah, that's
it's a little more extreme
Interesting.
than buying 2 PlayStations. You
Yeah,
had
well,
2 zeros
I mean,
on the end of that.
Yeah. just add like, 2, 3 more zeros onto the end of that. That's like, yeah, it's a bit much. But of course, it's like all of my PS2s, like I pretty much bought like, way after the life cycles. So it's like people would call me crazy for like, practically buying a bed of PS2s, but I mean, like I bought them, because it's like they are cheap now, relatively speaking. Like they cost about as much as like, a new video game this day and age.
Yeah,
like,
true.
it's about $60, like, $40 to $60 or something like that. And, I can just find a good deal on it. And then it's like, oh, well, okay, so this is this model of PlayStation. I'm going to, actually, why don't we could you hit the eject button and turn on that PS2 up there?
Sure.
I'll go ahead and
So is it good practice, or is it standard practice then that people who speedrun would go in and actually make sure that their consoles, just like a race car driver, go in and make sure that everything's at top notch at all times?
Yeah. Hang on 1 second. Just Vision E1S. There we go. Is this the correct? There it is. Okay. So yeah. So like here's the console right here. Could you pass me my controller, please? Yeah. So it's like on this version of PlayStation. It's a driver 1.11,
Okay.
and then this is a 70,012 model PlayStation. Other 70,012 model PlayStations aren't always going to have like the same version of PlayStation driver, which handles the loading of PlayStation 1 games very differently. But you can still hit triangle, you can still hit fast disk speed, slow disk speed. Generally fast disk speed is more favorable, but it all depends on the game. Some people think that, there's like one model of PlayStation that is just going to universally be the fastest, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It all depends on the model plus the driver and how it interacts with the loading of the game. So even if it's like worn down, like even a worn down PS2 SCPH 70,000 Slim is still faster than like the latest model SCPH 90,000 fresh out the box.
Yeah. It's funny because you let me borrow that actual console that we're looking at right now, and
Yes,
I without
it feels-
doubt noticed a difference in the loading time.
Yeah, it feels good to be reunited with my baby. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it back.
I tried to only keep it for a few days. I played through a lot of Symphony of the Night on it, and then ended up beating it on a PS1, so the little white consoles. And this was definitely faster. And then I had to my earlier point, I had a beat up PlayStation 1, one of the probably second or third revisions, and the loading time was unbearable because it needs a new lens.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess people on the tech side of things, if you're doing CD gaming streaming, speed running, make sure to always have a new lens, make sure to have it calibrated. And not to nerd out on everybody, but if you're putting a new lens in your console, unless you really know what you're doing, you should have an oscilloscope to measure the actual voltage going to it, or you could burn out that lens immediately. So
Yes.
always rely on your fellow nerds to help with this anything
that I don't know. I mean, it's like, even though it's like there's not a lot of soldering that needs to be done for like a lens thing, I'm still going to pass it off to someone else, even though it looks like I could do it myself. I don't want to take any chances of like losing it, because like, it's like, even though that SCPH 70012, didn't cost me much money to get, I still don't want to have to go hunting for another.
Right. Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
like another one just like it. Because if I, I'd rather have someone who actually knows what they're doing do it.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you have a very awesome setup, and you have you have a much more advanced version of what I would call a recommended setup. So I think anybody that's looking for pre-HD games, when I say HD, I guess a better way to put it is pre-HDMI game consoles. You're running things through and playing on a CRT, and then capturing through the best analog upscaler on the market, the open source scan converter. It is a little finicky, so unless you have a matching capture card, the FrameMeister, which was the best up until now, is an excellent choice as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's, people could accomplish these things as simply as buying an RGB cable that also has a composite video pigtail. So you could pick up just any CRT at all, any cheap one, game with composite video, which isn't the greatest, but at least you still get the high quality stream to go up onto Twitch and to save. And that is all relatively inexpensive to start out.
I never even considered the idea of like a SCART cable with like a composite pigtail, because I actually did want to do like a series of videos on game capture at some point. That's actually a really good idea. Like I
have those now and then.
Cool. Well, I would love to try one whenever I go into like experimenting with different setups.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool.
And it's I think that's something anybody could afford to do. Well, I don't want to say anybody, because I do know I have a lot of friends that live out in the middle of nowhere. So it's not like I'm in New York City.
Yeah, but of course, given like how common something like that is on the RGB market right now, I don't really see very many of like the people who are making cables, making something like that, unless it was like a custom order.
Well, with the PlayStation, that's very common because of the GunCon games that require you to plug in the composite video line.
Yes,
so
yes,
that's actually pretty standard in most of those. And PlayStation also has that adapter with the little breakout box in it. But it is a special request if you want it for like Super Nintendo or something like that. And I believe most of them would do it because it's just a little pigtail at the end. And I know Rob in the UK has his overmolds that he could probably just use something similar. Don't quote me on that one though.
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Sorry, Rob. But there's definitely different ways to do it. And especially if you want to do something like, my favorite console is the Super Nintendo, so you would pick up something like the HD Retrovision cables, if they're ever in stock. And then you could, if you want to build your own, you could solder to the board, and this is actually easy soldering, but you could actually solder your own little composite video pigtail to it, which is 2 wires. It's about as simple as it gets. I like to run the wire through the vent hole, which is ugly as sin, but you don't have to cut the plastic, so you're not ruining your consoles.
There's a vent hole on these composite cables.
Yeah, so
well, here I might have.
No, here this is.
Or
perfect
sorry, on the SCART cables is what I mean.
So all you would have to do is, you take it apart, and then you use these vent holes, and you run in just an RCA connector, and then you just look up the pinout of the multi-out on the bottom, and then you just solder composite video and have it sticking out, which is ugly, and a lot of modders will scoff at that, but it completely serves the purpose of now you use the multi-out for your capture. and you use the
Yeah.
composite video pigtail for your tube, and now for next to nothing, you have your split streaming setup. You don't have to invest in a ton of stuff.
Well, like that's actually, my next move after after I have my RGB setup on lock, is I'm actually going to try and go for the exact opposite, which is like try and output basic composite video, run it through an RF converter, and just like try to capture RF.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, but to do it the way I said it will work fine. To do it the opposite way, it's very hard to find capture cards that will process composite video or RF properly. So 240p is a progressive scan 320 by 240 image.
Right.
But your average device will interpret it as interlaced, and it'll look even worse. So if your goal is a vintage ugly look, then there you go. No. But it's not going to be an accurate.
It's not going to be an accurate vintage ugly look, right? Because it's still going to come out very interlaced.
But that's in rambling about that, I just wanted to prove the point that anybody that wants to get into this stuff can find a way to do it very, very cost effectively. If you wanted to do it, if you didn't mind the look of it, you could just use a composite video splitter and get a very cheap capture card and do it that way. But there's ways to start out for under $50.
Absolutely.
There's ways to do it and still get a really high quality stream with a zero lag CRT that doesn't add that much more on top of it. But what you have is what I think is like. It should be like the mark of excellence here. So you're using something called an Extron Crosspoint, which at time of release was thousands of dollars.
Yeah, well, these days they're mad cheap on eBay. So
they are, and then you have these nice nifty custom cables, all shielded, that have the BNC video ends, and this is actually called a Phoenix connector. This is how the Crosspoints process audio. And the major thing that sets these apart from other switches is that it's called a matrix switch. So you could have, I think yours is 12 inputs to 8 outputs. So that means you could switch between 12 consoles, and then you could output one to your rack-mounted 14-inch Sony BVM broadcast monitor, thing's killer, another one to your open-source scan converter to your capture card, and then you could do, if you ever expanded your setup and got different monitors to fit different uses, so maybe you get a giant-ass arcade monitor just for when you want to do light gun games, you could have all of your inputs and outputs set to that. Right. So that full matrix is something that's pretty killer. One question I always forget to ask you is, what capture card are you using?
I'm actually using two capture cards. Like the capture card that I'm using for the camcorder is a DataPath Vision SD4+1, which actually has like a breakout cable with 4 composite inputs.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. But otherwise it still processes the RGB video, and I also have a DataPath E1S, like a DataPath Vision E1S, and that's what I use to capture pretty much everything. Either through my OSSC or from HDMI from other game consoles. What I would really like is a good HDMI matrix, if I could find one that outputs the HDMI, or like takes input and like HDMI input from my computer, OSSC and all that, and just like output it directly to my capture card.
They have all. There's lots of those in the market, but because those are the mainstream tech, those are now the $1,000 boxes.
Yeah, so. Well, I mean, it's like I don't want it's kind of hard to find one. Like I don't want to use like any of like the monoprice ones, because like that tech has fallen through on me like multiple times. So it's like from my HDMI stuff, I'm like actually manually like unplugging and plugging in the HDMI to a splitter box, as opposed to using like a matrix. I mean, it's like not that bad because I don't really have all that many HDMI boxes in my setup. Like I just have like a killer gaming computer, and I just like plug that into the splitter directly, or I just plug in my OSSC to the splitter directly.
I found a few HDMI switchers that don't suck, but they're not great. So it's not something I would recommend in like a nice rack environment like this where you have everything plugged in. But it is, it's good enough for what I do. I found a couple with HDCP removal chips in there, which are hit or miss because sometimes that's a huge help, and other times it causes dropouts. The OSSC will freak out with the signal and stuff like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
HDMI is still, because it's evolving so quickly and because of that thing called HDCP, high definition copy protection.
Yeah, HDCP is kind of a biggie.
And it's useless. It was thwarted the day that it was released. There's always
Oh,
ways
yeah.
around it. And all it does is just cause handshake issues, and it's the stupidest thing. I actually I met some of the group behind that at a trade show one year. I don't think it was CES. It might have been Cedia. And I try to always be happy and polite. I was like, hey, are you guys like marketing guys or nerds? And they, one of them kind of just turns their back to me. I'm like, all right, marketing. And the other guy turns, he's like, why? All right, you're the nerd. What is wrong with you guys? Why would you do this? And he just starts laughing. And he's like, it's not us, it's the industry. It's people not understanding. It's people asking.
Right. Because I mean, because at the end of the day, if someone wants to find a way around the copy protection,
so easy.
they will within like a day. We're talking about like between like people who pirate games, cracking the copy protection, or even like video feeds, just like straight up from like the PS3. Someone just found like a monoprice box. Like when people started when HDMI capture cards started becoming a regular thing, they just found like a little splitter that does it, like a cheapo little $30 splitter that just like decodes the HDCP and doesn't re-encode it on output.
So, but that's the thing that really gets me is you mentioned game piracy. HDCP has nothing to do with that. All it is encoding the video signal. Mm-hmm. So, what are people worried about? You're going to take your game footage that you paid for on the console that you paid for?
It's not the game footage. It's like it's simple as like someone using like a PS3 as a Blu-ray player,
Right.
or using like Netflix or something. Just like being able to straight rip the movie off of Netflix or something.
And they have made progress. The game consoles, from the time the PS3 was released, the first large mainstream Blu-ray player till now, they've gotten way better, and that HDCP is turned off most of the time. Only when you're watching a Blu-ray is it turned on, or the Netflix apps and stuff like that. But it was a bumpy road starting out.
Yeah, well, I mean, these days with Xbox One, like it automatically turns on and turns off the HDCP, but you have to do a hard shutdown if you're going to disable the HDCP after you've watched Netflix on it. The PS4 just simply doesn't let you open Netflix unless you turn the HDCP option back on.
Okay.
So it's like each
kind of annoying, but a good safety precaution.
Yeah, it kind of works. Too bad that I already bought the box. I'm already circumventing HDCP because
Right.
I wanted something that was better for 720p video than components. So.
But since we're talking about HDMI and stuff like that, are the monitors that you use specifically low lag gaming monitors, and is that really even a thing that that bothers you? Or, I mean, obviously you're not going to play it on a cheap consumer grade TV in like movie mode where it's 10 frames of lag.
Yeah, exactly. Like I play. I play all of my PC games on, like, I have a 144 hertz Asus monitor here.
Okay.
And I just have one, have one DisplayPort connection running directly to it, and another HDMI connection. So I just use this as mostly my preview monitor, just to make sure that basically I'm getting the correct output from the splitter, and then I also use it for just to kind of make sure that all my connections are running smoothly. But other than that, I mostly play all my PC games from my gaming computer, just like directly on this monitor. But I had like two other monitors here, like two other Asus monitors, back when I only had a two monitor setup for my streaming computer. I would have like a third monitor specifically for my game consoles, and I would just use I would just use like a low latency, like the Asus monitors. They were all Evo, like for the Evo tournament monitors. I mean, really, I should have just bought, something cheaper. But even if one failed, I could just like use another one just in case, and just grab another cheapo monitor later if I needed some extra real estate.
Yeah, and also it's inherent to the ways the games were programmed as well. So I would think that I believe I might be wrong on this one because I'm not a software programmer, but I'm friends with people who are, and I believe N64 and on pretty much. Not so much maybe PS1, but definitely N64. The actual video bus has a frame buffer built in. So the thing that you find, there's a YouTube guy, Phonedork, who has what I think is a hilarious part of a video where he's trying to beat a part of Mega Man 2 where you're jumping on the dropping off platforms. And he's trying to do it through a high lag scaler on a TV that isn't set up right.
Right.
And then he just switches over to a CRT and he does it on the first try. So heavily timed jumps like that are really what the last consoles you'll find those in are like Super Nintendo, Genesis, things like that. Mm-hmm. So when people are talking about zero lag monitors, like all CRTs that are pre-HD are, that's way more important with the older consoles than it is with the new ones.
Yes, it's generally going to be, like, especially since all the LCD monitors, like, they all have a form of post processing. But generally, if you're going to do retro through an upscaler, mm-hmm. you want to have like a good low latency monitor. Like, right. And most people are going to look. Like if they actually look for gaming monitors, they're just going to look to what's tournament standard, like right. BenQ, Zowie, just like something like that.
That I was just going to ask something, but you answered it for me already. Look to what the tournaments are using for the monitors. That's a great way to do it, because there were a few times over the years where I'd bought monitors that were supposedly 1 millisecond lag, and when I got home and tested it, it was like 24 milliseconds.
Yeah, you got all that.
Milliseconds.
Got all that post processing on top of the upscaler unit. Right?
Yeah, and it's funny because I really feel like they should be more specific. If they said it's a 4K monitor, and if you run it in native resolution, it's 1 millisecond. No problem, I got you. But if you're doing the retro stuff, that's a big difference. Whereas if I was mm-hmm. PC gaming, first of all, I'd be able to run it at native 4K, so maybe it would be, but it would be less important to me as long as it's at about 1 frame of lag.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm just a freak, but I could actually tell just over 2 frames of lag is where I could start to tell the difference.
Yeah. No, I'm much the same way. I mean, like, it's like ultimately, my reflexes aren't going to fall within that, but it's still something that I like to try to keep consistent. Mm-hmm. For like timing purposes. It's actually pretty funny. GD like I was overhearing some of the techs talking at GDQ, or maybe it was maybe it was like an article. But like they were talking about how some people who run games on HDMI consoles, just PS4 whatever, they'll play a game on like a tournament grade monitor. Suddenly there's no lag, and it's like, this feels really different. And then they just switch them over to, okay, well, here's a consumer grade TV. Why don't you try running on this? Okay, that's perfect. And they're playing on something with input lag, and that's just simply what they're used to.
The one of the things that really blew my mind when I first started getting back into this stuff, when I first started the website, is I have friends that do love the old games, but they're not nerds and they don't play very often. And one of them came over, and I had like a little cart set up with a CRT RGB monitor and the consoles, and they're like, oh, cool, you got this game, that game. They actually named some pretty obscure games I was impressed that they liked. Yeah. And they're playing on it. And I forgot what she said. She said something like, hey, can you explain why this is different on your TV than mine? I went, well, what do you mean? The look, the colors, that? And she's like, well, I don't know really how to explain it, but when I press the button on mine, it feels like it takes longer for Mario to jump, whatever game that she was playing. And I started laughing. I'm like, you're describing lag. Yeah. So when you take that old console and you plug it into your flat screen TV at home, even in game mode, it's got to process from 240p up to 1080p or 4K. And
right.
And it was just so funny to see somebody that not a nerd and not into this completely experience the thing that I complain about all the time.
I can imagine. Like that's pretty much the basis for a lot of this stuff is like either you just simply want something that's more time appropriate, or you just plug it in and you realize, hey, this this looks and feels like shit. I want to figure out how to make this run better. Some people just like, and then there's the other camp of people who are like, well, I still see the game. I'm playing the game. It's cool. I get to play the game again.
That's why it always cracks me up in the comments, where a lot of people are like, I just don't understand why you wouldn't buy a Raspberry Pi box. It's the same thing. And it just cracks me up. Like, man, if you only knew how far from the truth that was. In many cases, not always, but.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. There's the great debate between the SNES Mini and the Raspberry Pi, right?
Well, the SNES Mini is essentially a Raspberry Pi. It's just a Linux emulator box.
It's true. Yeah.
So I guess, I'm really glad we got to do this. I've wanted to get in your head and ask you all these questions and try to put myself in what it would be like to do something that I could never do. Because
do it anytime.
I always love stuff like this, right? Whether it's, watching my favorite football player or my favorite guitarist or something, like, do things that I can't do. I love to hear the story, the process, how you get here. So I really appreciate taking the time for all of this.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I'm trying to look around at your setup if there's anything we forgot to talk about. Is there anything else you want to say? Any tips? Anything to mention?
Tips. Have a good distribution amplifier. That's
okay.
but the Extron pretty much covers that. But just like
don't split signals just by using Y cables.
Right.
So
splitting the signals by using Y cables,
you burn out your console.
Yeah. Actually burn out your console that way?
It will shorten the life of your console, and it'll kill. It could kill the video chip, because what you're actually doing is drawing. Like if you were to take.
Oh, you're drawing power from two different places.
Right.
So yeah, because there's nothing that like actually amplifies it.
Right.
And it's just yeah.
Which is why specifically before I was saying you use the multi-out to get the RGB lines out, and then you solder your own composite video, because those are separate video signals.
Oh.
So that's not a split. You're touching completely different pins on the board. I've actually burnt out. I did a very cool demo at a trade show once where I took a Super Nintendo and I had every output, RF, composite, S-video, and RGB, all going to a line of CRT so people could see the difference in real time. And I thought, well, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if I could also show a consumer-grade CRT and an RGB monitor? And at the time, I didn't have the ability to RGB mod a TV, so I used a component video converter, and I just split the RGB lines. I soldered two, and it lasted about 10 minutes and burnt the chip out, because I'm literally drawing current from every pin on the output chip. So don't do that. You won't burn it out as quickly as I did, but you'll definitely. I always risk to reward, right? There's
dang, I gotta start asking you questions more often before I start implementing new things into my setup, because it's like
anytime,
half this,
man.
Because I feel like I could wind up doing like half this stuff that you just mentioned and just like totally destroy something. It's like, dude, these things were expensive to mod. I don't want to lose my assets here. Come on.
Yeah. That's why stuff like the G-SCART switch is so important to me, because you just have 8 inputs, 2 discrete outputs that don't affect each other at all, and it just works perfect. That's why they're always out of stock, and that's why everybody likes them.
Yeah, true.
So people can find you on Twitch /CarcinogenSDA, right?
Twitch.tv/CarcinogenSDA.
And I'll put the link down below. And you're on Twitter as well?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as well.
And is there any other social media that you normally go to, or are those just your two main?
My YouTube channel. Because I actually do I also like within my setup, I also do raw recordings of like just the game video and the game audio as well, and I tend to dub over it with just sort of drop knowledge bombs about the game, and I just upload it directly to my YouTube. Personally, I think that's like the stuff that I actually really like to show people is on my YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/CarcinogenSDA.
And is that like a highlight reel? So if somebody goes in, have you ever thought of doing that?
Highlight reels? Well, I mean, like if I had the time, then maybe, but I'd have to have someone else do it, who would like just constantly watch my streams and just like
flag the times and
flag the times. Well, I mean, it's like flagging the times alone. I mean, like I'm sure that there's a bot command, he's in the box. but yeah, like there's ways to do highlight reels, but generally I for my YouTube content, because it's like different from my stream content. Like I try to have like a bigger emphasis on, on like, the game itself, and less on like my personality.
Right. Yeah.
So I like to talk about the game and what makes the run of the game awesome, or how I do thing A, B, or C.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons I liked your channel so much. Even before I really got to know you, I think I met you for like a second, and then it was the iFix guys that told me about your channel, and I started watching your streams whenever I had some extra time, and it was, you have a personality, you talk about the game, which are fun to listen to, but it's not a gimmick. It's not like the cheesy radio host, like honk honk. Hey guys, welcome to KRPM, Carci radio station. No, it's
I like to do some of that stuff sometimes, but it's not like but it's not like my,
You're there for the games,
right,
and you have fun talking about them, but you're there for the game. You're not there to make a spectacle of yourself. So
I mean, it kind of depends on.
You can sometimes.
Yeah, I can. It depends on what I'm doing, but
that's you get into the game.
Yeah, but for my YouTube channel, it's like specifically, it's about the game, it's about the tech, it's about like speed running the game, and occasionally I might throw in a joke or two, but just trying not to sound like Ben Stein or anything.
I think your cat's fascinated with that 1405.
Yeah, he's fascinated by a lot of things. He actually that actually used to be like his favorite place to sit. Like I had my setup oriented like the other direction. He'd like just sit on top of the 14L5 while I was playing the game, probably because it's nice and warm up there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this was great. Thank you so much, man. We're gonna have you back on again. If you ever need any help, let me know. I'll, I have tons of boxes of weird connectors and stuff that you could probably use. So if you ever need anything, just text me. I'll make sure to come right by.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, Bob.
Great. Thanks again, man. Keep it up. I'll keep watching your stream.
All right. Thank you.